Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's workshop. I hope you all are having a wonderful day, morning, evening, night, wherever you are. My name is Michelle. I'm the Community Associate at MUJI Canada, and today we have our Modern Calligraphy Styles workshop with Telisa of Roesseinart. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you miss any part of this workshop, it will be recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel after the workshop. And also a reminder that this is a slightly more advanced workshop than usual. So if you are uncomfortable with your basic calligraphy yet, then you're still free to join us today and learn about these modern calligraphy styles, but just know that it's a bit more advanced, so knowing the basics of calligraphy would be very helpful. Also, if you have any questions at any point, please ask them in the Q&A box. We will try to get to as many questions as we can, but we might not be able to answer all of them. If you do have any further questions, you're always welcome to follow Telisa on Instagram at Roesseinart and DM her or look at all the tips and tricks that she posts over there. And finally, as always, we're also going to send a follow-up email with a survey letting us know how we did and also helpful links to any products that Telisa used today. And that's everything from me. I'm going to pass things off to Telisa now. Let's get started right here. Hi, Telisa, how are you?
Hi, everyone. So excited to teach again.
Yeah.
This is a brand new workshop. I've never taught this anywhere else before, so I'm excited to teach you guys, to teach you everyone about the modern calligraphy style. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background. So I've been doing calligraphy for about 3 years, and along those 3 years, I have tried many different styles. So I've developed and I've pretty much learned different ways of how to develop those styles. So if you follow my Instagram, if you go all the way down, you can literally see the evolution of styles that I have developed. So I am here to teach you all those different, maybe not all of them, but the most popular calligraphy modern styles that you can try today if you haven't. Now, so I'm going to flip the camera to show to show the worksheet. So hopefully you have your worksheet ready, printed, and let's get learning. Okay, let me just flip it. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, where's the flip button? Okay, there you go. All right, so set it up. Okay, so I hope everyone can see. All right, so now just wanted to give you a bit of a background about modern calligraphy style, what the difference is. So you've probably seen on Instagram traditional, some people have done traditional and modern calligraphy styles. I am personally more of a modern styles, but it is still very important to know the basic rules and so on and so forth before you want to break them, right? So 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 just to go over the differences between traditional and modern style here, I'm just gonna grab my pen so I can show you. I didn't print this in color, by the way. If you didn't print this in color, it's totally fine. You can still see the differences. Okay, so when it comes to the traditional, everything is very, very consistent. The slant is consistent. Like if you see here, like all the angle are very, very consistent, right? All parallel to each other. And then the baseline is all straight. And then the letter form is also the same. Like the way that you do L's, the way that you do your H, your A, B, C, they all look exact same. So it's very it's a lot harder to do. And in order to do and also like the spacing is also the same. What I mean by spacing is the space between from one letter to another. And then in order to have that consistency, that means that you really need a guideline to achieve that. So you will see a lot of traditional calligrapher, they usually use a light pad where they have like the guideline, and then they use light. So the light pad, the guideline on the second layer, and then your actual work. So for that, so then your angle could be consistent, spacing is consistent, and all of that. Now, when it comes to modern calligraphy, there is a bit more fun in it. So you're slightly breaking the rules, but not too much. So inconsistency is fine, but it's just a lot more fun and a lot more whimsical. So I'm going to show here like the different ways. So for example, this modern, slightly off slant. So like the words you can see here, it is, this one is like about like that angle. And then the L over here is a little bit more, I don't know, what, like you can tell that it's a little bit off than that one. So there's variety of the angles, right? But not too much. And also, if you notice here, there's bouncy. It's like a lot more bouncy than what we had, like the traditional one. So, and then the letter form you can have variances. So you can have the L that looks like that. And then, or you can have, for example, in one word, you want to have this as a letter R, and then you want to change it to like that. So it's just a lot more fun. It looks more whimsical, and it is more forgiving than the traditional calligraphy. Now, these two styles kind of like have anything to do with the tools as well. The traditional calligraphy, typically you would only use the ink and a nib kind of calligraphy. So, so you might have seen this before. So this is the nib, and then this is the nib holder. And what makes it, so this oblique basically makes it much easier to have that same consistency angle if you're a right-handed person. Whereas the modern style, even though you can do your ink and the nib, it's just more easier using like a brush pen. So that's what it looks like. This is not a MUJI. I'm just showing it to you. The different other tools that typically modern calligrapher and traditional calligrapher use. Okay, now we are going to be we're going through 5 popular modern calligraphy styles that we're gonna go through together. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate and we're gonna be going through this together. Okay, so the first one, we're gonna do horizontally extended strokes, bouncy strokes, exaggerated loops and ovals, overlapping strokes, disconnecting letters. So right now it may not make sense to you, but when I demonstrate it and then show it to you, it'll be more clear. So someone asked, when you say bouncy, do you mean down below the baseline? Yes, below and over the baseline. So we will go to that when it gets to the bouncy stroke. So the first one that I want to show you is the horizontally extended strokes. So if you remember from the basic strokes, the upward thin line strokes, so basically what typically happens is that you pretty much extending it. So you're making it even longer. Okay, so that's one of the tips. Okay, and then if you remember the what's it called, the overturn strokes, you are now extending it as well, like horizontally, right? So you're really stretching it to much bigger. And then the same thing with the underturn. So you're gonna see this kind of style went from this to really extending, stretching it out, that stroke. And then for the compound curve, if you remember when you learned the basic strokes, these compound curve would need to be parallel, right? The angle of that. But when you're doing the horizontally extended stroke, this is when you're breaking the rules where that compound curve becomes so extended that the angle does not have to be parallel to each other anymore. So I hope that makes sense. So right now it probably doesn't make super sense with when we're just seeing the strokes, but we're gonna do some example right now. So these examples that we're gonna go through together are examples of the extended strokes. So I'm choosing the words that does not have any descender and ascender loop, just to make it easier. So for example, the word mom, I'm just gonna like kind of move this a little bit. Okay, so if you see here, so when you're one of the ways to make it look like flowy when you're extending that stroke is, hold on, is to kind of like follow, and then you just like, you don't like, so as opposed to stop, hit, and then doing the downstroke, so you're kind of connecting that. So it's kind of like the kind of compound curve as your entry stroke, and then your your loops, oh sorry, yeah, so your underturn over here becomes extended. So I'm going to do different colors actually, so you can really see. So this is also extended. And then the word oh, I wouldn't extend the ovals because it's gonna look like kind of weird. So I would just keep it the same size, like the normal size. And then again, I'm extending that compound curve. Horizontally. And then this is again normal. And then I'm extending this again. Okay. So that's an example. So let's do the word sure. So again, usually all the strokes, the entry strokes and the exit strokes are extended. So you can do this in a surface or in a paper where you want to have like an end by like end to end style where it's like say for example, if you have like a coaster and you want the line to be like from the edge of the surface to the other edge to the other end. So this would be like a really, really nice style. So this is kind of like obviously it takes a lot more real estate when you do this style. So so it works for some design and it might not work for some others. Okay, so here's another example again. So we're gonna do the word sure. So again, I'm extending that entry strokes, and then I am going to do the S this way, where you just kind of connecting the letter S with the connecting letter to letter U. And then I'm keeping letter U like normal. I probably wouldn't extend letter U just because it might confuse people and it might look like letter W. So we want to be careful where to extend. It's better to only extend where you're connecting from one letter to the other letter than you're extending the letter. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to extend that to connect to R. And because R, it's kind of like connecting, there's only like 2 strokes in letter R. So I'm extending that. And then at the end, with the exit strokes of letter E, I'm just extending it like that. Okay. Hope everyone are following along. So so there is a lot more samples here that you can try on your own. I think if there is, maybe just try to do one more word, maybe letter, maybe the last one, new. Okay, so again, we're gonna extend that and it becomes a compound curve. So extended compound curve. And then you're extending that. And I'm gonna stop right here so it doesn't look really funny. So again, when it comes to letters that have under turn, I wouldn't extend that. Otherwise it might get lost. Like people might not be able to read it. And then just extending it. Yeah. So that's one style that you can try. So you can see like the consistency of the extension, right? So when you're so one tip when you're doing horizontally extended, you want to make sure that the extension is the same, is within the same distance. So you don't want one too close and then one too far, unless it's from like one word to another word. So that the further the wider extension stroke would be like sort of like a space. So like, for example, you see here, because it has more words in the word review, so the letters, so the strokes in between those letters are the same within the same distance. So hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna answer some question. Can I bounce while extending? Yes, you can. So we're gonna talk about how to mix styles at the end. After I wanted to like go through like one by one, and then we're gonna show you how we mix those styles. Do the same rules apply if you're doing capital letters? Capital letters only usually from the beginning of the letter, right? So you're not really extending it until like you actually mix it with I would probably do just like regular capital letter, and then the whatever the connecting letter before that, small so lowercase letters is going to be like the same style. So yeah, letters are not to be extended, only the connecting letters. I see when you end a word with an E, the end curves sometimes differ. How do you decide? Does it depend on the length of the word? Yeah, I think I just mentioned that. So depending on the length of the word, that's how I would end it differently. But between the words should have the same distance. Okay, so going to go to the next style, which is the bouncy stroke. This is the most popular style. So I'm gonna break it down by looking at the strokes before we jump into the words and letters, okay? All right, so the bouncy stroke. So now you remember when you learn about basic calligraphy, whether it's four or not, you always have the easiest way is that you know where your baseline. So your lower line, this is your baseline, and this is your waistline. Okay, so in the basic calligraphy style, you would go from, oh, I'm just trying to make sure that it's still, it's not. Okay, so you would remember that you go from the base and you go up, hit the waist, and then transition to downstroke, and then go back up again, right? So everything all within that your X height, which is under your your baseline and your waistline. Now, when you're doing a bouncy stroke, your loops is can go extend below the baseline or over the waistline. Okay, so for example here, so you go from here, and then I'm gonna go in the same, and then when I go down, I go dip under the baseline, or I go from baseline, go over the waistline, and then down, hit the baseline, and then up to the waistline. But if you notice, there is consistency in the angle. So you still want to try to do at the same parallel of that angle. Now for this, on the second one, it's bigger. So I made it bigger so then it kind of like one participant asked, can you extend and bounce? So this is what it would look like if you extend and bounce. And then if you do both going over the waistline and the baseline. So you can practice by going from small to big if you want to get that that your muscle memory, you're developing that muscle memory to have that fluidity, so you can just have a little more fun. So you can practice by going from small to big. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so So this example here, like, so I'm gonna write the, this is the baseline and that's the waistline, okay? So I go up all the way over. And then let me just move it a little bit. So I'm not fully following the lines, which is totally okay. Again, this is modern calligraphy, so you don't have to worry about all the super strict rules. So in here, you'll see it's a little bit more less opaque. So this is where you can practice all these bouncy. What's really important is that your baseline is still consistent. So because if your baseline is like going up and down, like if it's way too low and then way too high, then it's becoming really, really hard to read your calligraphy. Now, an example of that is, say for example, you want to do letter W. When your letter W is like way too low, and then you have a letter U, then people might be confused with what letter that you're trying to write. So keep in mind that your baseline still needs to be consistent, but it can go over, baseline and waistline, but it can go over or beyond that, okay? Well, it'll make more sense when we do the examples. Okay, so so if you want to try again with these to try yourself, this is the one where it goes over the baseline, and this one goes over the waistline. Now you will notice when you're doing the bounce, the strokes that are bouncing are the connecting letters. So again, like the same way as the horizontally extended stroke are the connecting letters, the connecting strokes. The same way with bounce, it's the connecting one. And it could overlap for sure. Okay, so let's go on, try with real example with actual words. Okay, so here's an example of letter, I'm sorry, not letter, the word. Okay, let's do transform together. I'm also gonna use, maybe I can use, okay. All right, so word transform here. So the letter T here, the underturn, I'm bouncing that, right? So I'm bouncing it and connecting it straight to letter R. Okay, so you're gonna do that, and then you're gonna go up. And then this is what I typically do, so I don't over bounce. If I bounce the first letter, I'm not gonna bounce the second letter. Unless it actually works in terms of like the whole overall look, I might do that, but I try not to over bounce too much. The reason being is that when you over bounce, it takes a lot of real estate. And if you're doing like a longer phrase, and it gets really, really busy, and it becomes really, really hard to read. To me, when it comes to calligraphy, going modern is fine. It's fine. It's great, but you also need to prioritize legibility. So just wanted to mention that. Okay, so the letter R here, so I'm not gonna bounce that. I'm gonna keep it normal. But then letter A, I'm going to bounce it. Not the oval, but the second stroke. And then and I'm doing the both over under the baseline and over the waistline. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to Do the same. And I'm not gonna bounce this because letter F is going to be bounced for. So I'm not gonna over bounce again. Okay. And because it's over, I mean, letter F is already normally over the baseline and the waistline because of its descending and ascending loop. So I'm going to keep letter O normal. And then I'm going to bounce letter R and over bounce that. And then I like this style where letter M, where the loops are two different heights. I think it's really cute style when people do that. And I absolutely love that. Oh, I forgot to do the thing. Okay, so I think that makes sense. And then let's see, I'm just like trying to see what word that could be a good one out of all these three. You know what, let's do this one because it has two T's. So so let's do gratitude. So I'm actually trying to use like positive words. So as you practice, it gives that whole positive vibe. Okay, so let's do the word gratitude. So I'm gonna, my entrance stroke is usually normal. I typically don't bounce it, especially when you have a letter that's a descender loop, because then you don't want it to be too heavy. So I'm gonna keep that normal. So, and then I'm going to do the oval and then the descending loop. And then, so again, this is still normal because it's already, normally letter G is below the baseline. So I'm not gonna go crazy for that. And then, but I'm going to bounce this, okay? And then again, for letter A, I'm gonna bounce the connecting letter here. And then for this letter T, I'm gonna keep it normal. Not gonna bounce it. I'm not gonna bounce letter I as well because I am planning to bounce the second letter T here. Before I do forget, I'm gonna do the strokes, across these strokes. And because I've already bounced that stroke, I'm not gonna bounce this one. And then I'm gonna bounce the connecting stroke. And then that's not gonna be bouncy. And I'm gonna bounce this ascending loop and then keep the letter E normal. So if you notice, I always, a lot of times I try to alternate bounce and then no bounce, bounce and then no bounce. Unless when you actually meet a letter that has descending loop, then you don't want to be overdoing it. Okay, so someone asked, you're using a marker, therefore there are no thick and thin. So I don't want to confuse you guys with the thick and thin, because I mean, on here it does. This is a regular pen. It's just a regular fine marker, MUJI fine marker over here. But I just want to focus really on the technique as opposed to the thick and thin. I feel like at this point you should know what you do the thick and thin part, and it's already on the worksheet. So yeah, so just wanted to focus on that. Can you show us how you can bounce the word run? U and N together are tricky. Okay, I'm gonna do it over here actually. Okay, actually no, I'm gonna do it over here. So if I want to do run, word run, so I'm gonna do regular regular size. There's obviously different ways of how you want to do it. Crap, sorry. My AirPods fell off. My apologies. Okay. For this, I'm actually just gonna focus on lowercase first, okay? So I'm going to bounce this part, right? And then I'm not going to bounce this letter, the underturn of letter U. And then I'm going to bounce and then do the compound curve. And then keep it normal. That's what I would do. Because I feel like it's a lot more balanced because this one already has an over the waistline stroke that kind of balance out with that compound curve bounce. A bounce compound curve. So this is how I would do it. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next style. So there is more sample here. Actual sentence: the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. If you guys know that whole sentence cover all from A to Z, I think that's why people use it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next style, which is the exaggerated loops and oval. Pretty straightforward as why it's called. Actually just kind of came up with the names just to keep it straightforward and simple. Now, this is how I would do letter L in modern calligraphy, but traditional way. And then, so this is what you would do when, so I'm kind of like basically combining bouncy and loops. It kind of they're kind of go hand in hand, but I'll explain to you why it's a bit a separate style. So in here, so from that I do my this stroke to be bouncy, but then I'm also exaggerating these these ovals of the loops. Okay. And I usually do this style if I want to fill up some space. Okay. So you the stuff that the letters that I'm showing you here, that I'm demonstrating here, are the letters that have the loops and ovals. So there's letter L's. So now when we see letter G, these are different ways of how I would exaggerate either the loops or the ovals. Okay, so this is a regular basic letter G. And then over here, I am exaggerating the loops. And in here, I'm exaggerating it even bigger. That it's actually touching the baseline. And over here, I'm slightly exaggerating the oval. So it's a bit over the waistline. And as well as exaggerating the ovals of the center loop of letter G. And over here, I'm exaggerating the ovals going below the baseline. And then because it's already so big, I'm not going to exaggerate it so much that so it doesn't look weird. So that's where I'm exaggerating letter G. Someone asked, can you make capital T and capital F? So I'm not gonna go over capitals today because those are kind of different. This is more like the modern calligraphy style. I'm just focusing more on the minuscule right now, but there will be some capitals that I'll be using, I think, later on, because I feel like capitals is just like the first letter of each sentence or word, right? And because you're not gonna do all capital letters in one word in calligraphy. So this is more about how to connect one letter to another in modern different styles. Okay, so so an example, two examples of how I would exaggerate the loops and ovals of letter D. So this is the normal one. And then I, over here, this is like normal, but then like I'm exaggerating that loop of the ascending loop. And then I'm going to bounce it. Just to kind of like balancing it out, right? And then over here, I am exaggerating it, the loop where it's below the baseline. Sorry, the waistline. So I go like that, really, really big. And then I would have to bounce this letter just to make it normal. And if you guys went to my, what is it? My flourish class, this is something that I would probably do. Like I would like extend that so become like a flourish. But this is just one example, okay? Now, letter O, it's pretty straightforward. You can do it like that, which is normal, but I also sometimes do this to fill out the space. So you can kind of go over that waistline and then make it even bigger. So however you feel. And for letter C, so this is the regular letter C. And then this C is, I'm exaggerating the oval part of where it goes below the baseline. So, right? So this is where I'm exaggerating it. And over here, I'm exaggerating it in the way that it's over the waistline and under the baseline. So in a way, it is kind of like bouncy, where it makes kind of sense with the style. And letter E, this is the normal letter E. And then this is how I would do if I want to go over. So I guess this is more like a bouncy, where I'm actually exaggerating that oval. Okay. And then this is if I'm exaggerating this part of the oval of letter E. So this is over the baseline and then bouncing it. Now, letter B, I find that I've done a lot more variety when it comes to exaggerating letter B. So this is the regular letter B. And this is when I'm actually exaggerating the ascender loop. You can see how big it is, right? And then this oval to be normal. Or you can also do both, where you're exaggerating that B and then having your oval going below the baseline. So this is I guess you can also bounce, include that in a bouncy style. And then I can also exaggerate that connecting stroke by going over behind that ascender loop. Okay, so that's like the variety styles of letter B. So let me just look at the questions. The letter R and A were both balanced side by side, as well as letter S. Is that too much bunch? We should do every other letter. If you feel that you want to do less is fine. Too much is not good enough. I have to look at what style that we did. I think that was probably the question that came out when we were doing the bouncy stroke. Was it? I can't find my paper anymore. Sorry, yeah. So if you feel like it's too much, again, it's everyone has different style. If you feel like it's too much, you can go less bounce. Less is always better to me personally. So less is always more. So yeah. However, where is that paper that oh, this is the one. I was that from the word gratitude. I can't remember, but yeah. So we'll go more on the tips on bouncy strokes again. If you have two letters side by side with an ascender and descender, the word lodge, would you exaggerate the D and G? I'm gonna have to like write that down first. That word to see. It really is like sometimes when you want to write it first and then you feel like should I extend it or not, you can decide that later. So when I do, if you went to my flourishing class, which is also recorded by the way, you can go there. With it was also with MUJI. I usually do um, the letters that has a center descender loop much later on because I can flourish it or I can exaggerate it. I have to see it first whether I can balance that out or not. So that's my tips. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so these examples of exaggerated loops and ovals in a word. Actually, it's more like a happy birthday. So it's in a phrase. Lucky me. Where can you find flourishing class? If you go to MUJI Facebook, actually, if you can go also, you can also go to my website and you'll find under the free downloads, there's flourishing worksheet. And I have the link to the recorded session that is actually uploaded on MUJI Canada's Facebook site. So yes, so you can actually go there after this class. Okay, so let's go on with the example. Go really quickly. So let's just do one for now. Let's do thank you because I'm kind of have a timestamp of how long I want to go with this one. Okay, so thank you for this exaggerated. So as you could probably see already, I basically bouncing and exaggerated loops and ovals are kind of gonna go hand in hand. So in here, I'm exaggerating the ascender loop of letter H, letter K, and the center loop of letter Y. And I'm exaggerating that O because if I were to do it normal, there's a little bit of space here. So you can kind of decide where you want to exaggerate those loops when you see there's a space for it. Okay, let's do it together. So I'm gonna bounce this letter T. And then, oops, almost forgot. And then I'm going to exaggerate that letter H. Now you can see how exaggerating it is compared to the X ratio. And then I'm gonna bounce this H. And I'm not going to bounce the oval of letter A. I'm gonna keep it like that. And I'm gonna bounce the compound curve for the entrance of letter N as well as the compound curve of that. And then again, because it's so busy here, I'm going to exaggerate that loop. So it will take some practice to know where to loop. It's always a trial and error. It's not always one time and then boom, like your design looks balanced. It does take a lot of practice. So the next I'm gonna keep that entry stroke normal, and then I'm gonna keep this also normal because I know that I want to like exaggerate this loop to kind of balance that out. Okay. And then, like as I mentioned before, I'm going to exaggerate that so then it's not too empty here. And then I'm gonna exaggerate this again. I could go normal, but I feel like it's still kind of like empty because I bounce it here. So that's where, this is the fun part. Oops. Okay, right? So that's where I would actually do. Thank you. There are obviously many different ways of how you want to use this style of exaggerating your loops and ovals and bouncy stroke. This is just one way. And that's the fun part about modern calligraphy style. You can do it so many different ways depending on how you want to do it, right? Depending on your preference of styles. Okay, so next we're gonna do the overlapping strokes. Okay, so the only way for me to show you is to actually use a real word. So as an example here, overlapping stroke is, you notice here, I am overlapping the exaggerated loops of the letter Y. Now you can tell that what I'm doing here is slowly, surely, by adding each of those styles as we go along. Okay, so I'm basically overlapping it here. I love this style. It looks so flowy when you see it all together. Now, what's really, really important, same rules as flourishing. When you're overlapping, when you're exaggerating your loops and overlapping another stroke, you want to make sure that it is either overlapping thin and thin stroke, or thin and then thick strokes. I'm gonna do a full, okay? But not thick and then thick. It's gonna look so heavy and busy if you do that. So, okay? All right, so let's do this together. Let's do the word spy, because that's kind of already busy. Okay, so let's do letter S. So I'm gonna do it normal, letter S. This one's normal letter P with a little bit of flair. And then when I'm doing that letter Y, the loops, again, it's overlapping that downstroke of letter P. Oops. Okay. I think that makes sense. So I usually do this overlapping strokes when I have a letter Y, a letter G, basically any letters, not all the time, letters with descending loop, or even actually ascending loop, as well as the T cross bar of letter T. Okay. So I just want to see how am I with time for overlapping. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I think let's do this word Y. So the first stroke here is just a regular underturn, and then I'm going to bounce that second underturn. And I'm going to keep the letter H, the first stroke of letter H, to be normal. And I'm going to bounce that compound curve connecting to letter Y. And then I'm going to keep this underturn normal. And then we're going to overlap that stroke that when we did the bounce compound curve. Okay. So that's one way of overlapping that. So there's another way where I do this kind of, I guess, combination of like a loop and then sort of a compound curve, just to kind of have it like a flare. So it's really all about like having that fun of like just overlapping that. Okay, so if you were to, sorry, I forgot the T crossbar, and this oval will be normal. I'm gonna bounce that under turn, keep this oval normal, and then you really like exaggerate and then overlapping that stroke. Okay. So you probably notice that sometimes when I'm doing the stroke, um like it's leaving some mark. The reason why is like because my camera phone is so close to the paper and the pen is like really long. So it's a little bit hard to adjust a little bit, but I'm trying my best. Hopefully um it doesn't bother you guys at all. Okay, so another way of overlapping. So I like to do this when I have two letter L's. This is like really fun overlapping the strokes. So I would do the word well. So under turn, normal, and under turn again, normal, but then and then connecting it with letter E, still normal. And then when I do the L, I am exaggerating that loop. And then the loop of letter L is inside that big loop L. So I've definitely done this before for some of my calligraphy work. It is fun, and I want to actually continue on with this word. This is another way of overlapping and passing that letter R. Okay. All right. So yeah. So let's do the bounce entry stroke of letter M, and then the down strokes, and then again, I love doing the that M where the first overstroke is over the waistline, and then the second stroke, the next stroke is just over just under that waistline. It's such a nice flare. Okay, and I'm doing bouncy here, and I'm keeping my O normal. The same with the oval of letter D, and I'm going to exaggerate that loop, and to make it make sense, I'm going to bounce it, keep this E normal, and I'm going to cross that R. I'm going to overlap that. Okay, so that's how I would also overlap the strokes over here. Okay, and then the other style that sometimes I like to do is exaggerate that loop so much that it is overlapping that two thick strokes. So it's also another fun way to overlap, and then to kind of connect to the R. So this is like one of the ways that I would actually do this modern style. It just looks so flowy when I use the style, and it is one of my favorite. I try not to overlap too much though, because when you're overlapping way too much, then it's going to be really hard to read. So like have like some sort of you can decide where to overlap or not, depending if you feel that like can your reader read this or not. Just want to see if there's any questions so far. I think we already covered that letter side by side when it's center and the center with the word lodge. But we can probably maybe do the word lodge now. I think we have time. I'm just gonna do it over here, okay? If you have two letters side by side within a center and the center, the word lodge. I think that's letter D and letter G, which exaggerate. Let's try. Let's see how I would do it. Okay, so Am I going to, I can exaggerate. I can even exaggerate and overlap that. So really up to you how you want to do it, but this is one of the ways that I would do the word lodge. I'm doing it in full. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, so this is how I would do the word faux. Sorry, I forgot my baby monitor is. Oh my God. Sorry about that.
No worries, Telisa. I muted you for a second once you get that fixed. So let me know if you want to unmute whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Awesome.
My apologies
No problem.
for that. Okay, so this is how I write the word lodge. I can exaggerate even bigger on that letter D and letter G. It's totally fine if you want to do it. It really depending on how the words around that letter lodge. If it was like a long phrase, can I exaggerate it? If there is an ascender loop over here, I probably won't. But if there's nothing, then I probably would. So really, the whole decision that you want to make is when you see it after you see all the words. So which is why drafting is really important, especially when it comes to long text calligraphy. That's where you decide you want to, when you're drafting, that's when you decide when you want to do those styles. Okay, so the next, okay, so we can do next, which is the, oh, so that was overlapping stroke just with words. Now, the next is basically if, so if this is if what happens if I were to do it in a whole sentence. There is always beauty in everything. Let's just do one. And I'm just gonna point out where I would exaggerate and why. Sorry, where I would overlap and why. Okay, so I'm exaggerating the H here and then overlapping on letter R, and which I can do, which is fine. So I'm just going to use the green one. So this is where it overlaps. I have to make sure that it doesn't overlap like thick and thick, right? And then I'm going to keep going, and as I go, this L is exaggerating. I'm not overlapping anything. And again, I'm exaggerating and overlapping. Sorry, I'm overlapping the loops of letter Y over here. And then on the T cross, I am overlapping here. You could just not overlap. You could do that, or you can also overlap it. It's literally like there's no rules. As long as you know how to do it in style, it's totally fine. And then I'm overlapping it here again, where I do the bounce and then exaggerated loops of letter Y. Then I'm overlapping here again, same kind of idea, the bounce and then exaggerated letter Y. And then over here, this is like a lot of overlapping again. Over here, I'm actually connecting the letter, the T crossbar of letter T and over, and then the ascender loop of letter H, just to make it more fun. And then I'm not going to exaggerate and bounce here because there's so much overlapping here. So again, like I mentioned earlier, usually this is where you want to draft first before you want to decide to change your mind. Should you do exaggerated oval or not? Should you do this, or should you overlap or not? That's when you do the drafting. It's really it's kind of almost impossible to do everything all at one go without drafting. I draft everything. I draft this too, so So when I built this, I changed my mind, which is totally fine, right? That's where practice comes to. Write the letter K. Please show how you would write the letter K, like capital K or just the letter K. Because I think I had an example of letter K somewhere around here. In like we did letter K in here, so that's how we do it. But this is not the only way to do it. You can also do letter K like this, or you can skip the loops and keep it like that. Totally fine. Do you exaggerate the loops and overlaps? You go, or it is better to write the whole word and then decide where those things will go. I usually write everything first and then decide after. It's just easier for me. So I typically, when I do long, specifically long phrases or sentences or any long text calligraphy, I typically do all the strokes except for the ascender loop and descender loop. So I do that later. Then that's when I decide if I need to exaggerate them or not. All right, so the next style is disconnecting letters. So this is gonna be a really quick one. It is pretty straightforward, just exactly what it means. You are disconnecting the letters. So for example, here in the word growth, I'm disconnecting letter R and letter O. So this is another way to add style in your modern calligraphy, right? And then over here on the second word, I'm disconnecting letter T and letter I. I'm disconnecting this too. Even though I'm disconnecting, I'm still doing an entry. You could skip the entry stroke or not. It's totally up to you, as long as the distance is consistent. And then over here, I am disconnecting letter L to letter E. I could bounce it, but I choose to disconnect it. Again, this is where you're having fun, and then disconnecting letter E, letter T, and letter E. And here, this example is when you have two of the same two letters side by side. So I'm disconnecting those two letters. So this is just a kind of like variety of two different letters, right? So I do this a lot when I have two of the same letters, and then I'll just disconnect them, but keeping the distance the same. This is another way of what I would do if I have two of the same letters, and then I would just disconnect the second one as opposed to bouncing it again. So all of this is like just for fun. I don't disconnect, try not to disconnect too much. Like again, like for me, less is more. If you do less disconnecting, then it's totally, it's better than overly disconnecting everything. And the cool thing about this, when it comes to disconnect or like the variety of all of them, then people can tell this is not a font. It's something that you are doing with your hand, because you have that flexibility and versatility of creating so many different ways of forming those letters. And that's something a font cannot do. Even if it's like a calligraphy font that you would probably like, you could purchase, there's only so much that you can do with their variety, right? And that's where all these variety of styles is just really encouraged, and it really shows your skills. Okay, gonna look at the examples before I go into the questions. So this example here basically covers everything, all the styles that we did, except for the horizontally extended strokes. So those horizontal extenders, I feel like it's a one-off thing. If you're using that style, just maintain with that style, and then everything else. But if you're doing like this, then I would keep it the same. If you're already doing all your distant, you want to be close like this, and keep it like that. Okay. So these words, let's do it all together. So I'm starting the letter E with a capital E, like a really loose capital E. And I'm bouncing it, and then I'm keeping that normal, but I'm extending, exaggerating that, what is it, that stroke of letter X. And I'm slightly bouncing that C, not too much, because there's already bounce over there. Keeping this E normal. And then keeping this L normal. And just like the previous example that we did, I'm going to disconnect that letter L to letter E. So I'm going to keep it like that. And when you're disconnecting, a lot of times it's, if you're connecting, if you're connecting it, it would have looked like a bounce. So it's usually below the baseline. So you don't stop over here. You kind of keep it going. So then it doesn't look like a letter E. I'm gonna bounce that slightly. And then just gonna try to keep it as fast as I could. And I'm gonna keep this one normal. And I do like to bounce letter S. Bounce again. And then here, I'm disconnecting letter N to letter O. And there you have it. And this one is pretty normal. A little bit of bounce. And then for art, I'm disconnecting letter R and letter T. And then I'm overlapping that T stroke. Bounce a little bit. And I'm not gonna bounce that. I'm gonna keep it normal. And for a lot of times I disconnect letter H and letter E. I'm gonna bounce it a little bit. And then, I'm disconnecting letter H and letter A. Bouncing it, and I'm going to overlap these loops. And I'm ending my T like that, as if it was like a disconnecting T. So I typically, when it comes to any letters, sorry, not letters, any words that are only 2 letters, I'm keeping it connected. Just so that it doesn't look confusing like it is. Unless obviously if it's like, you can disconnect capital I, but if I were to disconnect capital I would probably do a different capital. And for this word, I am disconnecting letter R and letter T. So I don't over disconnect. I try not to go like too many, depending on how long the word is. But again, less is more. Okay. So that's how we do disconnect the letters. Okay, so I'm going to go see the Q&A. Could you show us BV savvy? So that's W. Okay, let's see. Okay, so for whatever example that you are asking me to do, I'm using a fine point, so yeah. So it's a full letter, so sassy. So if I okay, we didn't cover capital letters because it's not the intention, but I'm gonna write that word in capital. So when it comes to capital, I don't connect the first letter to the second letter. I usually just like leave it as it is. So with the modern style that we're doing, so I'm gonna do that. Ooh, this is a tricky one. I'm actually not gonna connect letter V. So this is what I'm gonna do. Keep it that, and then is that how you pronounce it, right? Double F. Yeah, I'm not gonna connect the V and letter V because it might look like an R, because the whole point is modern. So, but that's how I would write the word savvy. Savvy, I don't know if I said it right. How would you write the letter I in a capital on its own? So I would write, this is how I do a letter I. So it's always above the waistline. So I'm going to do that capital stem. Right, that's how I would do letter I. So if it was it is, there you go. Okay. Can you show letter P? I think that means you're asking for, you know what? I'm gonna grab a paper, a separate paper actually, because I don't have it. You can see this. Can you show letter P? Capital P, I'm assuming. And this is how I would do capital P. So the capital stem. If you guys go to my flourishing workshop worksheet, I actually have samples of capital letters under the flourishing, so feel free to check it out. Because I wanted to talk more about the tips actually. Okay, so I'm gonna get back to the Q&A, but I want to kind of go over the some of the tips. I think I mentioned it earlier when I talk about the bouncy strokes. You want to keep your baseline consistent. If you saw the sample, even in any of these samples that I have, all the baseline is consistent. What I meant about inconsistent baseline is if we were to look, if you were to write, let's say for example, minimum. I think that's like a simple one. So pretend pretend the baseline is over there. Okay. So if you were to do bouncy and then your I is over here, and then your N is over here, and then your I is over there, it's look at the mess that we're creating here. So this is not the right way. Oh, oops, sorry. This is not the right way of doing bouncy calligraphy, because the baseline is supposed to stay here. The baseline is supposed to stay over here, straight, but we're jumping up. This one's okay, but like you're jumping around. It just becomes like really, really, one, it's not balanced, and it's just too if you had like a long phrase, long text calligraphy, this wouldn't be legible. Legibility is very, very important. So yeah, so you don't want something like that. So you want to make sure that all of your baseline is consistent. Have a guideline if you need. Grab your, if you're using a plain paper, grab a ruler. I always have a ruler, or I could also have the level laser, the laser level, so then I know where my baseline is. Super, super important. So yeah, so I mean, especially when you're writing calligraphy, typically it's easier when you rotate your paper. It looks straight on the screen, but I'm actually rotating my camera as well, so it looks straight. But I'm rotating my paper. I'm sitting like straight like this is how I'm sitting down, but the paper is slanted. And especially when you're writing like that, ergonomically is better for you. And then keeping your baseline straight is really hard without the guidelines. So don't be afraid of not using, don't be afraid to use guidelines. So that's what I meant to say. And then combine all the styles, which we actually did, and then just to have fun. If you want to just do disconnecting or bouncy, cool. You can, if you don't want to do exaggerating loops, cool, that's totally fine. It's really up to you. When you're practicing, you will decide what you love to do the most, and how your muscle memory is going to develop. So you'll have your own style. For better legibility, try not to add too many variations to your slants. So what I'm talking about is, imagine if, so say I'm going to draw my baseline. So if I want to write something, say like a name, having a variety of slants is fine, but having it so off, it will look, it's going to be hard to read. So for example, I'm thinking of the word name. So if I were to do name, and then like you go like that way, when you go straight, and then that way, this is like a really bad example. So like basically this is your angle of your letter N, and then you decided to go straight, really way off, and then you kind of change the angle again, and then you change the angle again, and then you kind of went back to normal, back to the beginning. And then on top of that, your baseline is like way down here. So you don't want to do that. So you can change your slants just a little bit. It's totally fine, but not too much. So say for example here, so this angle is right here. This one is a little bit more to that angle, which is totally fine. As long as it's not too extreme like that, where you went from at an angle and then you decided to go straight, then it's going to be not harmonious anymore. Okay. And then try not to overdo it. I did mention it, like the simpler, the better. So, but have fun. That's where you want to practice, and have fun with all of these fun styles, right? Make it more whimsical. So I'm going to go through the Q&A. What kind of project would you use disconnecting style in? Any project. I have done it in engraving. I have done it on pretty much any surface. I have done it on long text calligraphy, in vows or lyrics. Pretty much I have done all of that, pretty much in anything. There is no, again, like when it comes to modern calligraphy, you can break the rules as long as you know how to do it in style. And it can pretty much be done for any project, right? So you're going to develop that style based on what you like to do. For the disconnecting page, the word creativity has to see, okay, let me go back. disconnecting. Okay. That was this. Okay. For the disconnecting page, the word creativity has the C and R descending. How do you know how much to descend? Because the C is slightly than the R. Is that a preference or a way to balance the word? It's both. It's I do it to as a preference, and I just wanted to balance it out. I think that's what you're asking. So it really is, again, modern style. You can break any rules within what you like, and it could be your preference, and it could be I need to balance the style, or it could be because surrounding those letters, surrounding that word, there's like an emptiness, or you need to bounce it. It really depending on how the end project is, how it will ended up looking like. So yeah. So next, hi Telisa, do you disconnect same letters? I did, as I showed here. I disconnect, or sometimes I don't and then disconnect it after. I can disconnect, you can disconnect any letters, but as long as it's like not too many, like within one word. Say like if you're doing happy, if you're disconnecting H and then A and then P, then it doesn't look as nice anymore. So don't over disconnect. Disconnect less. Okay, yeah. So hope that answers. Will the rules be same when using brush pen as with the pointed pens? Absolutely. I am just using fine point because just kind of want to showcase the MUJI products. This is a great marker, by the way, and I'm using a fine point because I don't want to distract you from any of the whole point of me showing those technique. Absolutely, I have used, you can use both any the pointed pen or brush, chalk, marker, engraving drills, any writing tools can go with any styles of this. Okay, so any tips when I rub out my very, very light pencil baseline? It sometimes affects the calligraphy a bit. Not because it's wet, but it fades it a bit. Any suggestion? So I'm not sure if I understand affecting the calligraphy in what way. It fades a bit. Like can you, if it fades, can you, like I don't think I understand what your question is. Like, how does it affect the calligraphy if it's not fading? Is it like, is it maybe the paper or the ink that you're using? That's if you don't find comfortable using a very light pencil baseline, you can also use a laser level. Let me see if I have it here. I actually have it here. Great. So this is a laser level. I use this a lot. It can be really harsh on your eyes, so I try not to use it too much. But and it's right now my lighting is so bright, that's why you kind of see it faintly. But if you don't like using pencil as your guideline, you can use this laser level, or you could also use a guideline paper on the bottom and then a light pad. So that's my suggestion. Okay, so next, thank you so much, Lisa. Love the class. My favorite modern calligraphy class so far. Thank you so much for your lovely comment and feedback. Oh, don't forget to leave a feedback, by the way, by the end of this workshop. Michelle's gonna send you an email to everyone to provide a feedback. It would be really, really, really helpful. And she's also gonna send, I guess, yeah, the link for that feedback.
Yep, that'll be in the email.
Yeah. And then, okay, so apart from more practice, how to make sure the distance is the same between all the letters in a word? Practice. If you see some guidelines, honestly, it's just to kind of, what you need to do when you practice, you don't want to practice just blindly, just practicing and not analyzing your word, right? So when you practice one word, you want to like look back, okay, I think that's like the same, or of like, or if you feel like, okay, that's a little bit too further, like the distance is too long or too short. When you practice, you also need to analyze and continually improve your strokes. Okay. So I answered that. Next question. Can you explain the difference between copper plate and modern calligraphy? So copper plate typically use always use actually ink and nib. I think it was showing in the first page that I show where we show, well, it kind of is. I actually use iPad, but close to that. Like the copper plate has a square top, and it's a lot more rules, where modern, well, I just showed it to you. Basically, I answered this to you here over here. I think there's 1 more minute, so I'm gonna answer one more question. Oh, I think I covered everything. Everything else is just, oh, are there worksheets for practice that are just blank lines available? You can actually probably look it up if you Google worksheets, like just the guidelines, you mean? Yes, there are so many. You can find it anywhere. If you Google blank guidelines, you'll find tons of free ones out there. Maybe that's one thing that I'll probably do in the future, to upload a like a blank lines. It's for me, when I created this worksheet, I actually just create lines. I wanted to make it big so then you guys can see clearly on the screen. Okay. So I think I covered everything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Telisa. And I see a lot of praise in the comments for you. This was a wonderful class, and I'm so happy we got a full 90 minutes worth. It was really nice to see all these different styles and how they work. So thank you so much for teaching us tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you everyone for staying until the end. And follow me on Instagram. I always give lots of tips.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe next time I'll teach another course.
Yeah, that'd be really awesome to have you back. So yeah, I hope everyone has a good night or morning or day wherever you are in the world. And yeah, follow Telisa on Instagram at Roesseinart. It's on the screen if you need it. And we hope to see you all soon again. So
okay.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.